Don't throw bouquets at me. Don't please my folks too much. Don't laugh at my jokes too much. People will say love. Don't sigh and gaze at me. Your sighs are so kind. Your eyes mustn't glow like mine. People will say we're in love. Don't stop collecting things. Give me my rose and my glove. Sweetheart, they're collecting things. People will say we're in love. Till the stars fade away from the they'll see it's all right with me. People will say we're in love. Don't throw bouquets at me. Don't please my folks too much. Don't laugh at my jokes too much. People say love. Don't praise my charms too much. Don't look so vain with me. Don't stand in the rain with me. People will say we're in love. Don't take my arm too much. Don't keep your hand in mine. Your hand feels so grand in mine. People will say we're in love. Don't dance all night with me. Ooh. Till the stars fade from above. They'll see it's alright with me. People will say we're in love. Oh, well, let's see. Let's just go ahead and nip this in where it needs to be recorded. This is a recorded dispute. Let's just go straight to rabbis. We're gonna go straight to Talmud Judaism. I'm gonna get this in the nub where we need to go. Rabbi Akiva says the 10 tribes will not return, as the verse says, Deuteronomy 29:27. And the Lord uprooted them from upon the land with fury, anger, and great wrath, and he cast them to another land. And it is this day, just as day passes, and it will never return, so too they will be exiled, never to return. You see that? Rabbi Akiva. And let's just go. Before we do anything, let's just do that. Rabbi Akiva. And you have great days and holidays and stuff. So let's go here before we even go anywhere. So we're going to get the Judaism and the Jerusalem church. We're going to go ahead and get that out of the way. Whether you want to talk about Khazars and whatever you want. We're just going straight to the source. We go straight. And Rabbi Akiva, the 10 tribes will not return. All right. All right. And that just goes over what we just said about what we say in Chronicles. We're getting to that. according to the southern position of Judah, it says that although Judah prevailed above whatever, do or die litmus test. I'm going to tell you the do or die litmus test. Left, right, conspiracy theorists or not. And listen, I'm going to tell you, red, brown, yellow, black, and white. Abraham, many sons had Father Abraham, and I'm one of them, so are you. So, let's all praise the Lord. How about that? Good Samaritan. How about that? Stay in. We'll figure that out. Let's go. And, yeah, you know about all that going on, right? The apocalypse happening. Just Texas and New York and Florida might be next, but it's amazing they burn up Hollywood right there. Big old show right there for you. But we got the rabbi talking. Chronicles. So and let's go and get this right here while we're at you too. And we talk about Constantine. And listen, when you look up Constantine, you look up letter of Constance, and it goes into he was the leader of Roman, and he's a statue. He's like a leader of the Roman, one of their saints or whatever. Later, he has his son. But here's the thing. Here's what you got to do. Constantine, Constantine the Great, whatever. But here, his mother's Helena. Listen, he's not a Roman. He's not a Roman statue. He's not a Roman. He's not a Roman relic. This is what you guys do. You steal this stuff. See, King, I got a crown too. I'll tell you in a minute. I got a star. Both Geoffrey of Monmouth and Henry of Huntingdon promoted the popular tradition that Helena was the British princess of the king, of the princess, and the daughter of old King Cole. And when you look into old King Cole, it's Coleus anyway, but he didn't have a son. He had a daughter. He would say, it was in the daughter, and one in the line. Hey, do I need to go back? Do I need to bring you Judas's or whatever, your New King James or your Old King James or King James only, whoever you are? You're talking about, we're just going to get this religious stuff out of the way. We're going to go ahead and then I'm going to get into libertine. I'm going to show you what liberty is right here. This is what it's all about. That's what I'm telling you. Listen, Old King Cole was Coleus. Listen, he's from Old King Cole, the daughter. And if I need to take your own scripture back and go to the Torah before this, there are times when the daughter takes over. You know what I'm talking? You're talking about your only patron. I know you're getting it with this is patronal lineage. I know, but there are certain times where the daughter takes over, and it's even in your mainstream 66 book. You know what I mean? If I need to go there, I will. I don't have to though. Do you know that? No, the one I'm talking to, because I'm only calling right now. Listen, judgment starts at the judge house. I'm calling the popes out. I just done it. Linus. Well, we can do that. Linus, first bishop of Rome. Blessed by Paul, not Peter, according to your own apostolic constitutions. So there, enough of that. But here, other than that, Constantine was a mother. So she is British. She's British. So you Romans try to steal our saints. That's just another. And then Boadicea. They fought you too. Anyway, we'll just do that. Get that out of the way. And anywhere. There's so many places you could get occupied. I'm like serious. Big time. Because they're both playing all kind of games. No, okay. We'll go here. Maybe you need to know this. Oh, yeah, preposition 2 days before the event, according to AI. It's whatever in California. They know what's going on. Any of y'all that know, they know. You need to know this, though. Hey, listen, before you say, because in a minute you're going to say I'm a hardcore liberal. Because if I stand up against Trump, you'll say, oh, you're a liberal, because all y'all two-sided people. Watch this right here. This was Trump inaugurated person. Here's another Trump inaugurated people. Here's William Sowell calling out Marxist popes. Here's Alex getting called out because he won't call out the Pope. Here's CIA agent and how they rule everything. Because this is a counter-reformation. And listen, man, if you want to be atheist, be atheist. Because at the end of the day, listen, I like a Thomas Paine. Let me tell you what. Thomas Paine, while I'm at this, Thomas Paine, if you know what I'm talking about, you can say whatever, and the atheists love to grab onto him. But get his book, Common Sense. Yeah, get it. He devotes several sentences to the reason behind why he's the whole Bible thing is like a crazy, because he says if Abraham was this and this and this and this, then it would be this and this and this, and it all adds up that it's not this and this and this. Well, listen, if somebody told him that the birthright belonged to Joseph and that the people of the Jews and that Abraham was not a Jew and this and that, then hey, give Thomas Paine some credit. He looked into it. I believe today he would not be an atheist. He would be for liberty, and I'm about to tell you what liberty is. I've explained that to you a little bit, but you need to know that there's people that want to come on to you, and they want to play their games. And yes, there's certain aspects that kill Jesus. It's called Jesus was a radical. He's not gonna put up with their crap. And I think I took it off, but I looked up the scripture to Weinbibber, and but I didn't get here on the screen, don't think. No, I already hit this. Let's see if we hit this. Yeah, the battery storage plant, they're going all over the place. You know, we've been under attack, but now we're actually under attack from like above, and people are in the dark. It's cool though. I just want to go ahead and call it out for what it needs to be called out for. Rom's taking it over. Because the Rockefeller and the Ford, as much as you want to grab on that Nazi right-winger thing, they brought in the bankers and the military and the bank establishment. They made your 40-hour week turn into 60-hour week and stuff. But so Josephus made this statement: there are but 2 tribes of Israel in Asia and Europe, subject to the Romans, while the 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates till now, and are an immense multitude, and not to be estimated by numbers. Josephus describes these Israelites as immense multitude, and not to be estimated in numbers. Josephus found many of the 4,950,000 missing Israelites. In harmony with the inspired writings of Apostle Peter, Josephus identified this innumerable multitude as being beyond the Euphrates. See, this is Joseph's bunch. Galatians 2:11-21. That's King James. I'm going to get on you guys in a minute. But when Peter came to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, this is libertine material, you guys. Take that left ring, white ring stuff and wing stuff and you throw it out there, man. Hear the word. If the Ecole Biblique is accountable to the Pontifical Biblical Commission and the Congregation for the Doctrines of Faith, what are its responsibilities to scholarship? How can any reputable academic institution function under the strain of such potential divided, even if mutual hostile loyalties? And what exactly would the Ecobleak do if, among the unpublished or perhaps as yet undiscovered Qumran material, something incommunicable to the church doctrine turned up? And listen, atheists can even call this out. And I don't blame you guys, man. The way they beat up on everybody, get that left wing stuff. You get over there, man. I'm gonna tell you, you leftists. Here's could be a fear to somebody. I ain't gonna fear though, because in a little bit, when I'm like coming against the right, Trump, then the people on the right will think I'm like them automatically. I'm not going to automatic want to be leftist. And see, that's the thing. I want you leftists to know, or whatever left of me to know, that even now where I'm with you, if I don't speak out now, I'm going to speak out. Listen, I am not over there on that group anyway, because I'm liberty. Here's the thing. But they're going to call me a leftist. Here's the thing. And you'll say, well, it's your own thing. Listen, I'm saying it to begin with. So at one time, we got to say, we're going to ignore you guys. Fuck you. Because the boot eventually eats the foot. And what exactly would the Ecobleak do among the unpublished or perhaps as yet undiscovered Qumran material, something incommunicable that turned up? Like Thomas Paine, smart thinker. There's a reason. I'm going to tell you, there are sources referencing James other than Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews and the Recognitions of Clement, which surfaced very early in the 3rd century. James, we're talking about James. There are sources referencing James other than Josephus and Recognitions of Clement. Perhaps the major source is Eusebius, 4th century bishop of Caesarea, the Roman capital of Judea, and author of one of the most important early church histories. In accordance with the conventions of the time, Eusebius quotes at length from early writers, many of whose works have not survived. And speaking of James, he cites Clement, Bishop of Alexandria, 150 to 215 AD. Clement refers to James, we are told, as the righteous, or as it is often translated, the just, Zadok in Hebrew. This, of course, is the by now familiar Qumranic usage, which derives the teacher of righteousness, the leader of the Qumran community. According to Clement, Eusebius reports, James was thrown from a parapet of the temple high up, then beaten to death with a club. James. Later in his chronicle, Eusebius quotes extensively from a 2nd century church historian, Hegesippus. Of all of Hegesippus' works were reputedly extant as late as the 16th or 17th century. Everything has since disappeared, though copies may well exist within the Vatican, as well as in another library of another monastery in Spain, for example. At present, however, almost everything we have by Hegesippus is contained in the excerpts from his work cited by Eusebius. Quoting Hegesippus, and listen, this is what I'm going to tell you. Talking about James. Quoting Hegesippus, Eusebius stated that James, the righteous, was holy from his birth. He drank no wine, ate no animal food, no razor came near his head. He did not smear himself with oil and took no baths. He alone was permitted to enter the holy place, the holy of holies in the temple. For his garments were not of wool, but of linen, priestly robes. He used to enter the sanctuary alone, and was often found on his knees beseeching forgiveness for the people, so that his knees grew hard like a camel's. Because of his unsurpassable righteousness, he was called the righteous, the bulwark of the people. At this point, it is worth interrupting the text to note certain intriguing details. James is said to wear linen, or priestly robes. This was the prerogative of those who served in the temple and belonged to one of the priestly families, traditionally the Sadducean aristocracy, who during the first kingdom, which might mean that he belonged to the aristocracy, that if he was a brother or was a whatever, the brother of the cousin, meaning family of, either there is a association with the aristocracy. Jesus had one extreme or the other. Sadducean aristocracy, who during the 1st century came to an accommodation with Rome and the Herodian dynasty of Roman puppets. Again, Epiphanes, another church historian, speaks of James wearing the mitre of the high priest. Then, too, only the high priest was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum, and the most sacred spot in the temple. James pastored that Jerusalem church for 19 years, and his disciples still thought he denied the messiahship of Christ. Does that sound like a born-again Christian to you? On the other hand, Paul preached one day and started fights. When was James considered canon-worthy, and by whom? The Qumran community employs similar righteousness passages from the New Testament in order to describe the death of the teacher of righteousness. Eusebius goes on to describe the death of James in the following manner. So they went up and threw down the righteous one. They said to each other, let us stone James the righteous, and began to stone him, as in spite of his fall, he was still alive. Like they threw him from the top, from the steeple, while they pelted him with stones. A member of the particular priestly family called out, stop, what are you doing? The one of them, a fuller, took the club which he used to beat cloths, like you beat cloths in the snow, beat cloths, beat the dust off of them, and he brought down on the head of the righteous one. Such was his martyrdom. Immediately after this, Vespasian began to besiege them. They say a lot of this was because it was James or whatever. He finally put his foot down and said, whatever. But it took him 19 years to lead that church. Listen, 19 years. And here's where I'm going to go. What do you guys, you scholars or whatever, what is the earliest book that you consider written, those that you study this stuff, whatever, that's written in the New Testament, whatever? What's the earliest one? Give me an answer. Give me an answer. It's James. So at what time is James? All right. Now, James was written down. So at what time was this actually happen? There's some early stuff right here, right? But it'll come in later. Huh? Vespasian, who became emperor in AD 69, commanded the Roman armory that invaded Judea to put down the revolt of AD 66. Here again, then, is a chronological connection between James' death and the revolt. But Eusebius goes further. The connection for him is more than just chronological. The entire siege of Jerusalem, he says, meaning presumably the whole of the revolt of Judea, was a direct consequence of James' death, for no other reason than this wicked crime of which he had been the victim. To support this startling contention, Eusebius invokes Josephus. The passage of Josephus he quotes, although no longer to be found in the extant version of Josephus, was unquestionably what Josephus wrote, because Origen, one of the earliest and most prolific of the church fathers, quotes extensively and precisely this same passage, referring to the revolt of AD 66 and the Roman invasion that followed. Josephus states that these things happened to the Jews in requital for James the righteous, who was the brother of Jesus, known as Christ. For though he was the most righteous of men, the Jews put him to death. But it took him 19 years. He kept bringing on what? The law, a little bit of ifs and ifs and ifs and a buts and a buts. From these fragments pertaining to James, a scenario begins to take form. James, the acknowledged leader of the early church in Jerusalem, pay the poor, which is telling Jesus, pay the poor. What'd Paul say? Oh, ye Galatians, who hath bewitched you? When he went into Jerusalem, tell them people, man, you be hanging out with me or whatever, you be doing whatever, and then you go over and you act like crazy, man. They done got you all wrapped up in some legal stuff. They be spying on Timothy. See, hey, that guy got his ding-a-ling cut. See, circumcised. And are you eating with this? Or are you doing this? Are you doing this? It's a deal, doing if. The acknowledged leader of the early church in Jerusalem represents a faction of Jews who, like the Qumran community, are zealous for the law. Prior to 200, there is no solid evidence of the literary use of James. In the Muratorian canon, prior to 200, there's no solid evidence of James. In the Muratorian canon, 200, James is missing. Tertullian fails to mention James. Eusebius does not mention James. Hippolytus and Tertullian from early in the 3rd century do not mention or quote James. Cyprian of Carthage in the middle of the 3rd century also makes no mention. The Muratorian canon from around 200 lists and comments on New Testament books, but fails to mention James. Bishops in 428 and 466 rejected all the Catholic epistles. Early Bibles from Lebanon, Egypt, Armenia, India, and China do not include James before the 6th century. A 9th century manuscript from Mount Sinai leaves out the Catholic epistles, and the Syriac Church, headquartered in Kerala, India, continues to use a lectionary without them still today. In the Western Church, the controversy continued as well. Jerome delivered a Latin translation of the New Testament, including James, in 384. He comments that James wrote only one epistle, which is reckoned among the 7 Catholic epistles, and even this is claimed to some to have been published by someone else under his name, and gradually, as time went on, to have gained an authority. In 426, Augustine's own Christian learning moves James to the end of the Catholic epistles. The Reformation. After accepting the New Testament canon for 1,000 years, Rome speaks out for the first time on the subject at the Council of Florence in 1439-43. The council clearly lists James and the Catholic epistles as canon. This was just in time for early reformers to return to the early church's doubts. Jacob Thomas de Vio and Erasmus de Rotterdam produced Bible commentaries in the early 1500s that doubted the authority of the Epistle of James. This sets the stage for Luther's German translation and doubts in 1522. The Catholic Church responded to the perceived threat to the canon. The Latin Vulgate was declared as sacred and canonical, and the Absolute Article of Faith in 1546. In the next years, some reformers labeled James and other books as apocrypha and even non-canonical. How does justification by works before man, or justify that you have faith, prove you have works by doing works of charity and great feats of faith harmonize with this? Matthew 6:1, take heed ye do not do your alms before men and see to them, otherwise you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 6:2, therefore when y'all do as you do in the alms, do not sound trumpet before thee, and your hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets, may have glory before men, verily I say, they have no reward. Matthew 6:3, but as thou doest alms, let not the left hand know what the right hand doeth. Matthew 6:4, take that alms and may be secret, and that Father which seeth thyself secret reward thee openly. Matthew 6:7, when you pray us, and they shall pray us, the hypocrites, praying not standing out loudly in the corners and the streets, and may be seen, for I say, you have no reward. Matthew 6:6, but thou prayest in the closet, thou shut that door, pray to the Father which is in secret, Father which seeth secret, for reward you openly. When the fragmentary details of Qumran text have been assembled into a coherent sequence, what emerged was something extraordinarily similar to the Chronicles of Acts, Josephus, and early Christian historians. The scrolls told their own story, as the center of which was a single protagonist, the teacher of righteousness, an exemplar of the same virtues associated with James. Like James, the teacher was the acknowledged leader of the sectarian religious community whose members were zealous for the law. And like James, the teacher had to contend with 2 quite separate and distinct adversaries. One of these was dubbed the liar, an outsider who was admitted to the community, then turned renegade, quarreled with the teacher, and hijacked part of the community's doctrine and membership. According to the Habakkuk commentary, the liar did not listen to the word received by the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of God. Instead, he appealed to the unfaithful of the new covenant, in that they have not believed in the covenant of God and hath profaned his holy name. The text states explicitly that the liar flouted the law in the midst of the whole congregation. He led many astray and raised a congregation on deceit. He himself is said to be pregnant with works of deceit. These, of course, are precisely the transgressions of which Paul is accused of in Acts, transgressions which lead, at the end of Acts, to the attempt of his life. Notice Paul striking hypersensitive to the charges, prevarication, and perjury. In 1 Timothy 2:7, for example, he asserts indignity as if defending himself, that I am telling the truth and no lie. In 2 Corinthians 11:31, he swears, The God and Father of the Lord Jesus knows that I am not lying. These are two instances Paul's letters reveal an almost obsessive desire to exculpate himself from implied accusation of falsity. According to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the liar was the adversary of the teacher of righteousness, the adversary of James. See, it is Paul versus James. That's what I'm telling you. Anybody that tells you that, listen, I'm going to go in here. This is liberty. Anybody that tells you and tries to reconcile James and Paul, if you want to be smart, they might say 99 other stuff right, but they're getting the key wrong. Anybody that tries to reconcile James and Paul is not worth you wasting another fraction of a second, an instant of your time listening to forever. The atheists know this. Here's the difference. Jesus is love. He told us to put it in the tent, the law in the tent, and the bondwoman and her harlot children, because the children were promised not to be heirs of the children of bondage, and to cast those mothers out. He conspired to exterminate the poor. The teacher's second adversary was from outside. This was the wicked priest, a corrupt representative of the establishment who had betrayed his function and his faith. He conspired to exterminate the poor, those zealous for the law, said to be scattered about Jerusalem, and other priests. Yeah, because see, he came to fulfill the law. It is only Jesus, no king but Jesus, no pope, no king, no nothing. And I've done repudiated and going to the whole hierarchy of whatever. Your own rabbis confess to this. Your own Torah confesses this. Your King James Version, your Torah, and whatever, they confess to that. Your King the Hereditary confesses to this. I'm not listening to it. Paul testified, this is the war. He harried the teacher of righteousness wherever the teacher sought refuge. In the hands of the wicked priest minions, the teacher suffered some serious injury, and possibly, we need to give him some injury. The text is vague on the matter of death. Subsequently, and here's the thing, he tried to ride the line for 19 years and say, well, we're going to obey the law a little bit. He never did. And when he finally stood up for Jesus, they killed him. But it took that son of a gun 19 years. Paul he was starting fights right a minute. They wanted to kill Paul the first day. Listen, they wanted to kill Paul the first day. James, on the other hand, he hawed around. But eventually, they killed him too. Took him 19 years, though, because he tried to run the line. Paul was right to begin with. Subsequently, the wicked priest was himself assassinated by his fathers of the teacher who, after killing him, took vengeance upon his body of flesh. That is, defiled his corpse. Yeah, man, they defiled his corpse. Those perverts. Because they want to pervert. Oh, you perverts. You be talking about perverting. Because the perverting the gospel is bringing up all that doo-doo stuff. Listen, and it's been said, and it's going to laugh, but you start bringing your do-do-do's and your butts, and it makes poo-poo out of the gospel. And it's been said, and it's funny, and I've heard it before, and I didn't make it up. The parallels between the wicked priest of the scrolls and the historical figure of the high priest Annas are unmistakable. Again, if the Acoboblique is accountable to the pontifical publication, who now wants to push works. That's what they are, Pelagian, whatever. They want to put, the Rome pushes works. They push works. They're not going to take a stand on by faith and cast James. See, James, the empire right here, it couldn't even exist without James, because you got to use that. Show me your faith and I'll show you my works. Again, if the Acoboblique is accountable to the Pontifical Biblical Commission and the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, what are its responsibilities to scholarship? How can any reputable academic institution function under the strain of such potential divided, even mutual hostile loyalties? And what exactly would the Acoboblique do if among the unpublished or perhaps the undiscovered Qumran material, something identical to church doctrine turned up? I'm astonished that you so quickly deserted him who called you to grace, called you in grace of Christ, and turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another gospel, but there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But if we, or an angel from heaven, should preach to you the gospel contrary to what we preach to you, let him be accursed. Listen, If they come, let him be goddamned. If anybody comes and tries to tell you, listen, as we have said before, now I say again, and he's going to double down. If anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to that which you receive, let him be accursed. If anybody comes to you and tries to throw that James crowd on you, let him be accursed. Anybody tries to reconcile, show me your work, listen. And that's why there's no king but Jesus. And that's why there's liberty. And that's why we're not going to bow to popes. And we're not going to bow to kings. And we're not even going to judge you. We're going to judge myself. And I can discriminate within my own heart. But I ain't jumping on you. These people want to put bondage on you, let you figure it out. You need to know the love. You need to know the love of Jesus. I'm not getting on that bunch. They're going to get on you. They'll put chains on you. And they do. He doubled up. We can tell from the above passage that whoever his opponents were, they were Christians. See, this is going from the saying that he's a wicked priest. So we can tell from the above passage that whoever his opponents were, they were Christians in the sense that they were preaching about Jesus. But according to Paul, they were preaching another Jesus, another gospel that according to him perverts his own true gospel of Christ. Then Paul disapproved of this competing gospel as clear, for he openly cursed him. He called him goddamn, sons of Belial. That's what he called them. For other passages, we learn that they were Jewish Christians. They kept clinging to the law. Yeah, same thing going on today, because they advocated both circumcision and calendar observations and eating and washing and whatever they wanted to do because they couldn't get over it. But listen, on your defense, I'll defend your own. Hey, listen, your own Rabbi Akiva. Understand, you're going to prevail in some stuff, but you ain't getting the birthright. And if I'm Jew, I ain't getting the birthright when it comes to some stuff. So we got to shut up when it comes to stuff. Sometimes everybody needs to shut up and listen. Right? Should be. From other passages, we learn that they were Jewish Christians because they advocated both circumcision and calendar observations. Galatians 6:12. It is those who want to make good showing in the flesh that compel to you to be circumcised. You observe days, months, seasons. Did these missionaries attack Paul directly in their preaching? Paul de Sariat did not explicitly say so in the epistle. There are two considerations that provide strong evidence that he did. Firstly, Paul founded the Galatian church. And if they, with their different gospel, wanted to make headway, they almost certainly had to make critique of him and his teachings. Second, the whole apologetic tone of the first two chapters of Galatians presupposes that some kind of accusation, which we see two passages there where Paul asserted that his gospel came direct from God and not from men. Will Paul suddenly say this? It is obvious that some people were making allusions to him having a different gospel or his gospel from another people. Because in Galatians 1, Apostle said, not from men nor through men, but through Jesus Christ, because he met him on the road to Damascus, what he said. And in 11:12, for I would have you know, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not man's gospel, for I did not receive it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through the... See, and earlier it says that this teacher of wickedness, later, that he was like a learned professor, but he turned on his own people because he was trained at the feet of Gamaliel, at the priest. He was a Sadducee. He was a learned scholar. Paul saw the claim, the mystery, the fulfillment, the one and only time. It's done. It's over. And them try to put you in bondage now. You need to let your heart figure that out, and it will. It will. From Paul's defense above, we can infer with some certainty that the opposing mission claimed that he received his gospel from some people. Who were these people? The only people Paul talked about in the first two chapters were the Jerusalem pillars, James, Peter, and John. Oh, yeah. From Paul's defense, we can infer with some certainty that the opposing mission, so the opposers were James, Peter, and John. We will see this description of them during the Jerusalem Council. less than flattering, so I say. Then after 14 years, I went up again. See, Paul had already been preaching 14 years. He met Jesus and was preaching. But then he went to this other church in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem just happened to be the same crowd over there as where there was. Still preaching the law, whatever. Still preaching the law. See, it took James 19 years. 14 years he went up to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. I went up by revelation, and I laid before them, but privately before those who were of repute, the Greek, the gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, lest somehow I would be running or had run in vain, yada, yada, yada. You keep reading this. I need a drink. Yeah, Galatians 2, 1, 2. Then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. I went up by revelation, and I laid before them, but privately before those who were of repute. Greek diakoson, you know. The gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, lest someone I should be running or had run in vain. So he went to talk to the original ones or whatever, where it came from, or go back to town. And he found these guys. And from those who were reputed to be something, they were reputed to be something. What? That makes no difference to me. God knows no partiality. You know, it says what he's done for others, he'll do for you. Those and many things I've done, you'll do others. You'll do also. Those, I say, who were of repute, added nothing to me. And when they received the grace that was given to me, James and Cephas and John, who were reputed to be pillars, gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship. So after they talked to me, they gave me the right hand of fellowship. The root of the Greek words of as repute or reputed to me is the same, diko, meaning to seem, to suppose, in common Greek, koine, very probably implies some kind of deception, whether consciously or otherwise. Thus, the thrust of Paul, reference to the Jerusalem pillars, here is that they seem or think or were supposed to be important. But as he added in Galatians 2:6, it makes no difference to him. Jesus is king, and whatever. Thus, these passages were of conscious attempt by Paul to minimize the importance of the Jerusalem leadership of James, Peter, and Paul. You know, it took James 19 years for him to finally stand up for Jesus. And when they did, those same people finally killed him. Paul come and started war in one day. Furthermore, the whole thrust of Galatians was Paul's lack of contact with the Jerusalem leaders and his independence from them. He mentioned that he met Peter and James only 3 years after his conversion, and then only stayed with them for 15 days. Then he mentioned that during the Jerusalem council, the pillars, James and Peter, they added nothing to him. After his obvious attempts to minimize the importance of the Jerusalem leadership, he narrated the incident at Antioch, which tells of how he confronted Peter, one of the pillars, regarding the correctness of his law-free gospel. Galatians 2:11-14. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, that means before he went into James, before certain men came from James. So he was there hanging out. He ate with the Gentiles. He was chill. He was cool. He understood. But then when James come in, he draw back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews joined him in his hypocrisy, so that even Barnabas was carried away by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that they were not acting consistently with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you compel the Gentiles to live like Jews? Again, note the protagonist that Paul has placed upon himself. It was Peter, after receiving instructions from James, who was compelling Gentiles to live like Jews. Paul, of course, labeled such actions hypocrisy. The important point to note here is that Paul has given the Galatians an example of how he had stood up to the Judaizing party. In that example, his opponents were the pillars themselves, James and Peter, his opponents. These emphatic declarations of independence from the Jerusalem church, the purposeful minimization of the importance of the leadership, and the example of the incident at Antioch all point us to the accusation being made against him by the opposing mission. They also tell us the identity of the accusers. No king but Jesus. These guys want to put bondage on you, still do. We can mirror what his opponents were saying by looking at Paul's defense. He diminished the importance of the Jerusalem pillars, means that his opponents were making the opposite claim, that the leadership of James, Peter, and John were of supreme importance. By emphasizing his lack of contact with the Jerusalem leadership and that they're not adding anything to his gospel, we can surmise that the opponents emphasize the teaching of the Jerusalem church. You are correct. I will give you that, because it is James versus Paul. It is Jesus versus the law. It is grace versus bondage, people. Listen, they both want to. And the trick is, who's got the most money? Pope. I figured that out. And he's got his flunkies over there with the star by claiming that but your own constitutions, listen, tell you, Joseph got the birthright. You can play games, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, guess who's got top? The man with no money and no nothing but a few raven birds flying around. By claiming that he got his gospel direct from Jesus and not from men, shows us that his opponents making the opposite claim that Paul or anyone else's teaching should rightly come from the Jerusalem church. By similarly saying that his opponent of the apostleship came from Jesus, we can tell the opponents had a different definition of what was somehow related to the authority of the Jerusalem church, which is enough to tell you that just whatever, it might be the oldest, might not be the best. This guy was taught more than dude, man. He saw it. Thank God for Paul. By relating the incident at Antioch, Paul was showing how he had in past confronted such a problem against Peter and James. Since he did not qualify, even Jesus called Peter a Satan. Get behind me, dude. Since he did not, because I was meant to die. Since he did not qualify, and I'll raise again. And Peter wanted to raise his sword. You don't need no weapon. When I say you don't need no weapon, because it's all written. Since he did not qualify his example in any way, it provides strong evidence that his opponents had the support of James and the Jerusalem church. So we can construct from the opponent's arguments something like this. All apostles must be approved by the Jerusalem church, according to these people. Paul himself acquired his mission from the Jerusalem church, like we do. But he is preaching in an irresponsible manner, eschewing the importance of the Mosaic laws, even for Gentiles, which is not approved by James and the rest of the leadership. Listen, when was James wrote? Earliest, and it still took him 19 years. Yeah, I'm siding with James. I'm a Paulist. We can clearly see. We can summarize our study of the opponents of Paul in Galatia. These Jewish Galatians, these Jewish Christians, maybe I can start right here later. We can summarize our study of the opponents of Paul in Galatia. They were Jewish Christians who preached the continued validity of the Mosaic laws, even for Gentiles. They questioned Paul's authority to preach and his apostleship. They claimed the support of the Jerusalem church headed by James. This is the same thing. You got the Vatican, and you got Judaism, and you got Islam, and if you're Sunni or you're Shiite or you're whatever, you're pushing some type of something other than the blood's forgiven all. No king but Jesus. So you're all on the same team, call you Pelagius or whatever. So bring in the sinners. They claimed the support of the Jerusalem church headed by James. And the Council of Jerusalem was not an ecumenical council, but an appeal to James. Paul left discouraged, and all of them left Paul, save Luke, for a while. Again, the Catholic institution would have been out of business years ago if it weren't for James, which you already see, according to their own material. Did not even make its way in there till later, and it was disputed and disputed and disputed. Please note that the Jewish Encyclopedia says, the Jewish Christian opposition to Paul, traditionally ascribed to Peter, was not based only on his use of magic to make impression on the Romans and his denial of the Mosaic laws, but also on his duration of his apostolic mission from a spurious vision, whereas the true apostles were sent by Jesus himself. The Catholic Encyclopedia article Ebbinats corroborates the fact in the early days Paul was regarded as an illegitimate apostle and an apostate. See, they both want to trash him. Yeah, they both want to trash Jesus. You got involved. The Ebionites, which were the poor, which was James, violently opposed the theology of St. Paul because they believed that they had undergone, he had undergone a demonical hallucination when he claimed to have had a vision of Christ, and that he had opposed the conversion of the Jews to a perfect observance of the Mosaic laws. Listen, if it was up to James and that crew and even the disciples, if it wasn't for Paul seeing Jesus on the line, we'd just be an extension of Judaism. We have to be, it was Jesus plus, but something else, we got to do this. Listen, your buts, and you do's make poo out of the gospel. Listen, here is clearly acknowledged that Paul and James had different attitudes towards the Mosaic law. Paul told you, kick it in the tent with Hagar and her bondwoman and her harlot children, to kick them in the butt and kick the mothers out. It is also plainly stated that the Ebionites, that is, all those who were under the jurisdiction of James and the 12, vigorously opposed the apostleship of Paul, claiming that it was not Jesus who actually appeared to Paul, but that Paul had experience. And thank God for Marcion. If it wasn't for him, now he went extremes when he threw out the old at all, but he kept Paul's books. Thank you for your heretics actually appeared to Paul, but that he had experienced a demonical hallucinogen. More on James' adherence to the law from Epiphanes in a minute.